I am so happy to be recording an episode of this podcast covering Sons of Anarchy. And I'm coming back to a bit of a doozy episode where Clay gets the, almost entire charter thrown in jail. Way to go, Clay.
The Belated Binge Podcast.
Hi, and welcome to Belated Binge. My name's Zach, exploring iconic series I nearly missed out on, like Sons of Anarchy, which I didn't watch for the first time until like 4 years after the season finale aired on TV. Today, we are on Season 2, Episode 6, Falx Cerebi, which I can almost guarantee I'm saying incorrectly. And before we dig into this episode, there will be spoilers. There will probably be some language. There will definitely be adult situations with this particular show, so wear earbuds as necessary. Shout out to the Bonus Binge Squad on Patreon, patreon.com/belatedbinge. In our last episode, Gemma broke Tara's nose, and Opie met Lila. It was super cute. Zobel played 2 blackmail cards on Hale, one in the form of a video of Opie blowing up Darby's meth lab, and the other of Hale appearing to take a bribe, which was actually an envelope with invitations to his grand opening, but, no sound, just him taking an envelope. Unser lets Hale know what happened to Gemma, which is totally not going to ever come up for plot reasons ever, because this show's not about drama in the slightest. Hale let Clay and Jax both know about Zobel's evidence against Opie, as well as a shady deal that his brother had made, which turns out to be kind of a big deal in that episode. And I almost forgot. Chibs got blown the fuck up. So a lot happened in the last episode. It's kind of what I'm saying, which is kind of this show's thing. So today, we continue our binge. And, of course, I have to do it in the way that I do with all of these Sons of Anarchy episodes, and that is trying to take this chaotic ride of bikes, bullets, and brotherhood and spin this episode into a love story somehow. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is supporting your partner when they fill a porn star's car full of 38 caliber bullets. At least, they better. This episode opens with Chibs being loaded up into an ambulance, which is a cheerful way to start an episode. It's the literal aftermath of him being blown up. So we actually get Tara just front and center, closing the doors on things because she was there. I mention that because that comes up here in a little bit. Clay and Unser start off things by scheming on how to make sure no real cops find out that there was actually a bomb that went off and it wasn't an accident. And these two are kind of ridiculous in the way that they go about things. How in the world is it supposed to work that Unser is the only guy that is helping them, and he is also like the main chief sheriff, and nobody else is supposed to get suspicious when he's trying to pull strings, particularly with like other departments coming in to do the investigating? If he's the only thing in their way trying to stop them from figuring out what actually happened, and we're just gonna take it on face value that just coinkydink. Sure, that could totally play. But he's not actually the only one that is trying to help the club, because at this very moment, Jax and Hale are also having their own kind of powwow. Jax knows that they're getting set up by Zobel with all of this, and that they're just riding headfirst into an ambush, but nobody else wants to listen except for Bobby. Bobby is actually rational and thinks logically, which is rare amongst this group right now in the show, because it's a lot of just pent up anger happening. A whole lot, particularly from the head of the table. But again, we'll get to that in a second. Jax and Hale come to a bit of an agreement that they are going to try to help each other. Hale is going to try to help by getting to Zobel and Weston first and arresting them, or at least taking them in as people of interest in the crime, to at least hold them long enough for hopefully Clay to take a deep breath, maybe do some yoga, become zen, find his center, or at least just not do something incredibly fucking stupid, because he's fully capable of it, as we see in a bit. And Jax is going to help him do that for the same end. He wants to try to keep his club from riding head on into that ambush. And I just find it unfortunate, and this is one of those spoilers, that we don't actually get to see this relationship get maximized on the show. This arc was clearly being set up for Jackson Hale to be the, like, lawman and outlaw partnership, a la Clay and Unser, that could have been a really cool relationship to explore. Because what we don't know is how Unser and Clay came to be together in this thing. Now we get hints at it throughout the series, and we see how Unser feels about Gemma and how that could be tied into his motives to try to help Clay in the club. We don't really know. We know that there were things that happened in terms of Clay and Unser being involved with JT's death and all of that stuff, but it's never really spelled out for us, right? We don't get everything just laid out on a platter. We didn't get to see any of it happen. But with Hale and Jax, we absolutely could have. And having them actually coming from the very first episode, right? The pilot episode, one of the first scenes we see are Jax and Hale, and they're butting heads, and they're setting that up for them to be like enemies, right? Hale would do nothing, or that's a bad way of speaking. I'm hosting a podcast here and I can't use the English language. Let me rephrase that to say there's nothing he wouldn't do to get Jax and the club behind bars. And yet, over time, he and Jax, being two guys that actually grew up together in this town, actually care about the people in this town who took completely different paths. They diverged to go in total opposite directions. However, they come back to essentially the same place of trying to help the people of this town in their own ways. One being a man of the law, and one being completely outlaw. And if we could have gotten to see that whole potential arc between the two of how they got from point A to point B on that journey, I think it could have been incredibly interesting storytelling to explore. But of course, that's not what ends up happening. We get a really good season of it right now, and then what happens to Hale because of Sheridan and all whatever and like exact things happen behind the scenes. I truly haven't done all of that research to tell you with any kind of like, so this is what happened. I'm not a gossip columnist. I'm a podcaster that's a fan of this TV show. But I mean, Sheridan obviously did okay for himself with the whole Yellowstone of it all. So I don't think he's sad about it, but I'm sad about it, because while I enjoyed the shit out of the show Yellowstone as well, and I don't know, send me some kind of message or something if you want to have Yellowstone be one of the shows done on this podcast at some point in time. I'm open to that possibility. But what I am sad about is that this Hale character really had some runway to be really cool from a storytelling standpoint. And this season, I believe, is kind of that that little tease of just a beginning of what we could have had and we end up not actually getting. It's also funny that Jax and Clay are both having cops on the same force try to track down the same dudes in the same town for the same club for the same crime, but for completely polar opposite reasons. Jax is trying to protect the club, and Clay right now is doing everything he can to freaking destroy it. So that leads us into a scene which is weird to me, and it's between Jax and Tara. Gemma's there as a bystander for most of this, and I don't know. It's just odd. It's when it's everybody's in the aftermath, right? And Jax is trying to play this whole Chibs thing off like Tara doesn't know what just happened, and like he doesn't know who did it. And it just feels very inconsistent with how these two are as characters together to this point, right? Like they hit that moment where he's like super sharing, open and honest and tells her everything. I mean, when they went and got the fake revenge for Opie, he's like, yeah, I helped Opie kill a man today in retaliation for Donna. Now I'm going to go to bed. He said that in like a towel. I'm sure every female viewer or listener of this podcast knows that scene quite well. I can't blame you, because obviously. Now, obviously, right. But then other times, he's trying to play things off like she's a complete idiot and doesn't know what's going on. And I don't really get that inconsistency, particularly at this point in the show, because they haven't had reason, like they haven't come up against anything at this moment for him to stop sharing with her, for him to stop trusting her. Later on, you can convince me that he stops telling her stuff and he has some sometimes flawed reasoning, but there's at least reasoning there. I don't feel like there's been that right now. And so that's a little bit weird. And she has to almost smack him upside the head and be like, we were both here. We both watched that car blow up. What do you mean we don't know what happened? We watched it happen. And just as I'm defending her intelligence, she asks some stupid ass shit like, are you in danger? Am I? What do you think? That was a bomb. Remember? Bombs are pretty dangerous, last I checked. And as you so astutely pointed out, Miss Surgeon, you watched that happen. Of course you're in danger. And the fact that that is somehow a surprise or somehow like not just a given. All right, we have to suspend disbelief to watch a show like this, right? This type of television show happens within the real world, but it happens on such a scale that you have to realize that if true reality was a part of this, then we wouldn't have gotten to episode 2 with how much shit goes on in this show. And we surely wouldn't have gotten through 7 seasons. But for any intelligent human being, which you would have to be to become a surgeon, to know getting involved with someone who lives outside the law, you're going to be in some semblance of danger by default. There's literally no way to avoid that because he is living his entire existence outside the law, which means at any time he could be going to prison, he could be getting shot at or murdered or whatever, or any other slew of possibilities because he's living a completely different life than you and me. This show doesn't have the boring podcaster person in it, right? That character wouldn't play here very well. And Tara has to know that, like, of course you're in danger. Come on. Is it always literally a car bomb blowing up in your parking lot? No. But it's always going to be something that could happen and blow up your life, literally or metaphorically. And she is shocked by this. But you can see in this scene where I want to give a lot of acting credit. You can see in Tara's eyes the moment where she starts to realize that it's probably the same people that assaulted Gemma. And there's this little light that like pops in her eyes and then immediately gets burned out. It's subtle, but it's really, really good. Like, it's incredibly believable. And just for a human being to be able to make those types of emotions show just in their eyes while they're having a completely separate conversation and like doing it on cue. And I'm imagining like what acting might be like because I've never done it, but like just being able to cue that up, it's phenomenal. But of course, Gemma doesn't want to hear it because Gemma's like, this is not on me. Of course. Now, the meeting that follows where Jax goes into the clubhouse and it's time for everybody to get around the table, it actually goes kind of funny. Bobby asks if the plan should be that they just roll up and chop dude's head off in the middle of broad daylight. And Happy is down for this. Happy brings so much humor to this show without ever actually having to crack a smile. He's just so unhinged, and his character is absolute gold. And of course, though, Clay just wants to go kill Zobel without a plan, specifically without a plan. He specifically says he doesn't want a plan. He doesn't care what the plan is. He just wants to murder him. Which just goes back to how Jax knows that they're getting played like a fiddle. And Clay is not just taking the bait. He's already chomped on the bait. He's hooked, and he's just along for the ride now because he can't even see 4 inches past his face with the amount of rage that he has. And it's exactly what Zobel wants. But of course, Clay knows best. Just asks Opie, who gets all up in Jax's shit, claiming that he's all ego, just trying to take over the club, and he needs to just sit back and wait his turn. And that's what you get for trying to help somebody who is as toxic as Opie. And it's incredibly frustrating as a viewer knowing that Jax's problem with Clay is about Opie. It's about Donna. And to have Opie lashing out and accusing Jax of being selfish is heartbreaking. But like, manly heartbreaking, of course. Ugh. And credits. Baby IRA guy comes to pay a visit with his chest all puffed out. And both of the cops that are on the case, Sherlock Holmes style or whatever, very Elementary, Watson. I watched Elementary recently, by the way. It's a good show. I enjoyed it. I'm not a Sherlock guy. I haven't consumed much Sherlock Holmes material, but I enjoyed that, whatever, modern rendition of it, I guess you could say, modern adaptation. Anyway, both of the cops that are on the case, Unser and Hale, come through at the exact same time with leads on Zobel and Weston. And Opie's a snitch who tells Daddy Clay on Jax. He then becomes Jax's shadow, following him around, and he becomes very annoying. And this is not a good Opie episode. We're going to talk more about Opie, though, in a little bit when we do shine a headlight on a character. And I'm going to try my best to see the other side. But first, Juice gets interrupted trying to clean up the crime scene by the actual like lab tech police people. And in between, there's like a chase scene after Jax gets rid of Opie. And for whatever reason, when I was watching this episode, I felt like I remembered that chase scene being so much longer. Like I thought that they actually played some cat and mouse and like Jax really had to work to get away. Not the case. He just kind of like ran a red once. And I didn't even see him shift. He just opened throttle in whatever gear he was in and just went through a red light. And then Opie tried to follow and almost hit a car and ta-da, scene over. I didn't remember it that way. For whatever reason, I guess I just like melded some of the future chase scenes together into my memory of like, oh, that must have been when this. Nope, nothing really happened. So then we've got Unser, who is at the garage with Juice, and they're trying to figure out how to screw up the investigation so that obviously nobody can tell that a car bomb went off. And Unser gets this great idea to pour a cup of his piss onto the lab kit so they don't get good samples as evidence. Why this doesn't go to plan is anyone's guess. It couldn't have anything to do with there being no plan and these two dudes both being about as subtle as a car bomb was in the first place. Because none of this is what's the word? Inclandestine? What is that? Is that a $2 word? Did I use it right? It's probably completely wrong. Just don't Google it or ask ChatGPT or Alexa or whatever robot is listening to this right now. But the good news is, at least they got to cover one of the tech's faces in Unser's urine. His radioactive waste is gross. Just gross. Funny, though. We need the humor in this show. I think I'm going to be sad in later seasons when the humor is mostly gone and we miss the balance. I still think that's why season 1, I'm not going to say that season 1 is the best written season of this show, but I think it's the most enjoyable watch because I think it has the most like humor to balance out the series. And Zobel is heading into another phase of his plan. And by this, he seems to want to also dismantle the business for the club. And he's meeting with the IRA contacts directly in person. But only adults are allowed in the meeting, which is mostly just so that we can get a little meet cute for Edmund the son and Zobel's daughter, right? Like that's the only reason that's here. Because of course, spoiler, they're going to end up doing the hibbity-dibbity, and that's going to matter later. So now Jax and Hale wind up at Weston's house at the same time as the rest of the club is at Weston's house, and he gets to meet Weston's psycho kid. And at this point, I'm just going to ask the question on the internet for all to hear. Would it really have been all bad if the club just shot up the whole house and took him out? Yeah, I'm kidding. Sort of. I don't condone shooting children, even fictional racist ones, but this kid looks like a murderous member of the Cub Scouts, and I hate his existence and that Weston created it. This kid is the worst. And Clay just throws a temper tantrum in Zobel's shop like a leather-wearing Cub Scout leader with a drinking problem and a lot of rage. So much rage. But we do get to find out in the next scene that Chibs is alive. His brain is bleeding, but he is alive. And this is when Tara and Gemma are talking to each other in the hospital, getting an update on Chibs's status, and that is when we get the scene between Gemma and Hale to take place where we learn that Hale completely sucks at keeping secrets because, you know, he was supposed to keep that secret and he made it like half an episode, admitting to Gemma that he knows at least gets him a line on the daughter, which is good. It's not great for Unser when Gemma, you know, lets him know her displeasure that he shared her confidential situation with Hale, but I do like this moment for Hale. I think it's really humanizing for him, and it's another thing that I think that they were doing intentionally at this point in time. I think we were really supposed to get a lot of Hale. I think he was supposed to be a really big part of this show. And I think he could have been a really, like I said earlier, a very entertaining and enjoyable story to tell had it been able to go to the places that, you know, were possible. And it's moments like this that just like, again, humanize him and let you realize that like this dude actually gives a shit about these people, despite the fact that everyone thinks that he would hate them all because he wears a badge. And to this point, we thought that too. And I don't know, I like it. This is good storytelling, having moments like this for him. Next thing we have is Darby on the run, Hale and Jax pulling him over. Again, they kind of, it's quite the jump, right? From Hale talking to Gemma, and then all of a sudden he's with Jax and they're pulling Darby over. Or at least they've gotten Darby after he's been pulled over, whatever. But they're questioning him together, and he does give up the blonde, which is Zobel's daughter, and Hale does successfully keep that secret from Jax. So that one he did, and he did it smooth because he clearly wasn't struggling to lie to Jax's face about it to protect Gemma, which I actually find interesting, again, from that storytelling perspective and that humanization perspective. It seems like when he first found out, it seemed like he was going to struggle to keep that from Jax because, you know, that's Jax's mom. Like, that's heavy information to have when you're talking straight to the dude's face. And he gave them other information, but he didn't obviously reveal that part. And then, but in this moment, I think they could have, and maybe there was a take where they did it, maybe there wasn't. I think it could have been really interesting to have Hale take a moment, almost like have a sobering, like, facial gesture of some kind before he lied to Jax. That could have been really interesting to show that he was like at least struggling with holding that secret in. But no, he was on it and had no problem with his poker face in the slightest with Jax. And so that leads us into getting back to Gemma and Tara, who, you know, most of the scenes that either of them are in are together, or a lot of them anyways. I don't want to say most. Gemma's in a lot. Most of what Tara does is with Gemma. And they're having this like bonding moment after Tara gets a ride home. She's clearly been rattled by all of this crap. And they start bonding over firearms. And Gemma goes and gets her bins, and it's like an a la carte buffet line of choose your own adventure with, you know, guns. But the shooting lesson is just great. It's hysterical. They put up posters at the porn studio, and Gemma does try to like help teach Tara how to, you know, shoot, which is interesting because they had that moment in season 1 where Tara was like, I totally know how to shoot, and she was all like protruding false confidence about it. And in this moment, she doesn't even try to hide the fact that she doesn't know what she's doing. And Gemma is totally fine with helping her, which is cool because for them, again, they were very, you know, they were very at each other's throats throughout season 1. Here in season 2, Tara's got this giant secret of Gemma's, and they're really starting to come together in this like mentorship, you know, Gemma to Tara. And that's obviously something that becomes part of the story later, how all of that how all of that story evolves, and these are just those fun kind of early moments of these two getting along, and it's kind of funny. It's not as funny as them shooting up Ima's car, though, because that's hilarious. At least it wasn't her face, I suppose. I don't know if insurance covers what just happened, but, it's fun. That leads us into a scene where Hale is with Zobel's daughter. He puts on a glove, threatens to cut open his own arm and blame her for it, and he's getting played this whole time. He should have seen it coming. She gave up the information way too quick and easy after being way too overtly confrontational for no reason in the beginning, and it just, I don't know. This one never really did anything for me. But of course, it led to him sending the cavalry to exactly where Zobel wanted them, because everybody's taking the bait. Tara and Jax do have a cute little moment, and it's what I referenced in the make this episode a love story part to open the show. And it's when she comes by to see him at the clubhouse, and he mentions, hey, I got a call from Luann. Apparently there was a firearm incident at Cara, and she's like, oh yeah, no, I don't even know what you mean. And wait, is it Cara yet? I may have the name wrong. Is it Red? Is it just, are they calling it Cara already? Or is it Redwood? I don't know. The name doesn't matter. At the porn studio. And Tara plays it off like, I don't know what you mean. And, I love you. You better. And it's kind of a cute little moment for the two of them. Unfortunately, the club figures out where Zobel is as well, thanks to Juice hacking into the computer and finding the meeting invitation or whatever, or in Zobel's calendar, and they piece the things together all super quick and investigators, and now everything is screwed. Jax is freaking out, jumps in to try to find him. He's turning a wrench at this point, by the way, because we still haven't given up the whole these guys are just mechanics thing. That goes away later, obviously. But he's not the only one freaking out. Gemma's freaking out. Gemma is completely spiraling. She goes to the police station, terrifies Unser and Hale, and also you can tell that she's feeling the weight of everything that's happening and actually is considering, oh shit, is this my fault? Are these the same people? If I would have said something, would this not be happening? And she's going through it, and Unser's very supportive, as he always is. And Q set up. They're going to storm the church. They think it's a rowdy Nazi group. Of course, they're right where Zobel wants them to be. The cops are already on their way. Jax warns everybody, hey, if we do this, we're going to jail. And Clay doesn't give a shit, because Clay knows best and refuses to use his brain. Ever. At all. And of course, it's not a membership rally for the Aryan Brotherhood at all. It's like a fucking church group. And they already had a gun staged to fire away from the cameras. And all of this goes perfectly according to Zobel's plan. They played the dumbass bikers to be dumbass bikers. And it's not checkmate, but it's damn close, because they can't go after him because there's cameras already set up. They try to get out of the church. The cops are already there, and they're totally screwed. Opie's the only one that gets away. He's chasing Zobel in pursuit and runs into a parked car, and we get a montage of Tara reading JT's book. We have Gemma lighting candles and praying, and we have Opie watching the club all get loaded up for jail. And that is the episode. It's kind of a big episode because they all get arrested, but also not really the most things happening compared to other episodes of this show. So before we shine one headlight on a specific character, I would like to ask you to please leave a 5-star review in whatever podcast app you are using right now. And if it allows for you to comment with your review, I'd love it if you would say something nice. It would make me feel all warm and fuzzy and special, but it would also help the evil algorithms let some other new people hear it. Now, so for our character headlight segment, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to talk about Opie and why he's being such a dick to Jax. And I wanted to flip it, right? My first instinct was to say how Opie is just being the worst right now. Because he is. I love Opie. The fictional Opie. And I don't even know if I've told this story on the podcast. I love the fact that I get to now retroactively see Opie as a sneakerhead, because I saw on Ryan Hurst's Instagram one day something about, I don't know, there was like a story or something about sneakers in his closet or something, and I commented something along the lines of like, can I now retroactively say that Opie was a sneakerhead? And he responded, or his team, whoever is actually running that account, was like, that is headcanon approved, commence imagination, and it brought a bunch of joy to my life, because I'm just a nerd with a podcast that not many people listen to, and he made my day. Anyways, so I unrelated, love Opie as a character, hate what's happening right now, because he's being a dick. So I was like, let me see if I can flip it and see things from Opie's perspective. And this is what this is all I can really come up with. So his wife has been murdered. He thinks that it was a member of the Mayans, and it was just like a patsy that Clay tells him did it, because obviously he can't say, oh yeah, me and Tig. But once he gets the guy, Jax won't let him torture a confession out of him. Jax also covered up Opie, like carving the Anarchy A into the guy's stomach, chest, stomach, wherever it was, into his flesh. Jax covered that up so that the Mayans wouldn't see the tag the way that Opie wanted it. He sees Jax and Clay completely at each other's throats since he's been back from, abandoning his children after the funeral. I'm never going to let that one go. But he is lost, right? He's lost without his wife. Without Donna, Opie clearly doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know kind of who he is. Maybe he does. I mean, maybe he feels like he knows who he is, or the version of who he is that he's trying to escape into, but he's clearly lost. And instead of focusing all of his energy on his kids, he's decided to focus all of his energy on the club. And Clay is in charge of said club. And if Jax and Clay keep on fighting, it's going to fracture the club. He can't have his club broken. It's all he has, other than his kids, of course. Again, I'm never going to let this go. So, in a state of like trying to make the world make sense, he seems to want to simply fall in line in club pecking order and just follow that wherever it leads, and doesn't matter if he has to flirt with death, nearly blowing himself up in the meth lab, walking out into live gunfire. He's not thinking straight, and all he's thinking about is get in deeper with club. SAMCRO is the answer. SAMCRO is what's going to get me out of this fuckery that my life has become, and it's going to point me in the direction that I need to be. And Jax is the only person who is in the club and is trying to make sure that his family is okay, that his kids are okay, that he is actually okay. And he doesn't want that, because he knows that they aren't. And he's clearly not trying to face the truth himself. So he lashes out. And part of lashing out is trying to flip it and hurt Jax. Try to hit back. try to say, like, the thing that's going to dig in the most against Jax to protect himself from what's digging at him when Jax comes to check on him. What do they say about glass houses? It's absolutely frustrating as hell to watch because we love Opie and we hate to see him in this state and we hate to see him being a total jackass. But that's how you try to rationalize it, I think. Before we go, we're going to give out some new patches and fire off some bullets. Make sure you're following social media at Belated Binge. For this episode, I've only got a couple of new patches to give out. One of them is going to go to Hale for working with Jax, trying to help the club, not just working with him, but legitimately trying to keep the rest of the club from following Clay to prison. It just, doesn't work. But it's not because of his efforts. He was great. I'm also going to give out a new patch for Gemma for her shooting lesson and trying to help Tara feel better about the situation that they're in and kind of reassure her that things aren't always this crazy, even though we know how this show goes if we've seen it before. We're going to also aim some bullets at Clay. He's an idiot this entire season, really. At least to this point. It's been bananas how frustrating Clay has been. And so we're going to right at him. I got one for Weston as well for indoctrinating his children and raising just an awful, awful little piece of shit. I've got one for Zobel, obviously, for the whole master plan that's going just the way that he wanted it to, and for Opie for being such a dick to Jax this whole episode and cuddling up to Clay, the guy whose fault it is that your life is in a wreck. And I know he doesn't know that. And yes, Jax has kept that information from him, and I don't agree with that decision that Jax has made either. But anyways, I said I would try to see things from Opie's perspective. I didn't say I didn't still fucking hate it. Okay, before we go, let's rewrite this episode of Sons of Anarchy one small change at a time. For this one, we're going to say, what if Jax and Clay actually did work together in this episode? Is there anything they could have actually done differently that would have not played right into Zobel's plan? Or was this an inevitable track no matter how well they thought it out, how well they planned it, no matter how united they may have been, would they have ended up in the same outcome? Or if they had put their heads together and not been such just idiots together, would they have ended up at a different fate? You can comment on your thoughts on that question if you are watching this on YouTube, or Spotify allows comments as well. There's also an exclusive Facebook group for listeners of this podcast with a link in the show notes for this episode. I'm also open to starting a Discord if you would like to let me know if you would be interested in participating in said Discord. I am happy to fire that up in lieu of a Facebook group because it is 2025 at the point of recording this, almost the very end of it, and I don't know if you're still using Facebook. Maybe Discord is your preference. So you just let me know. The best responses might even find their way into a future episode of this podcast. If you did enjoy it, though, give me a follow or subscribe on whatever app that you're using. Thank you so much for being here. And remember, life is short. Buy the motorcycle. And when you do, wear a helmet. Dress for the slide, not the ride. And make sure you take Belated Binge along for that ride.